Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Alt24 News live from Algiers. Coming up next in our World News program. President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, held private talks with his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, followed by press conference initiated by the two presidents to review the most important results negotiations between the two countries, plus the patriotic movement of safeguarding and restoration led by Deputy Colonel Valerie Damibi appeared on state television saying that they had ousted Kabari, the government, and suspended the constitution. At least 8 people have died and 50 were reported injured in a crash outside an Africa Cup of Nations football match in Cameroon. Also coming up in our World News program, less than 2 weeks before the opening of the Winter Olympics, a few dozen COVID-19 cases in Beijing have prompted authorities to test millions of people in the capital and extend that to anyone buying cold medicine. And thrusters on the James Webb Space Telescope fired for 297 seconds on Monday at 2 p.m. as it approached its final destination around 1 million miles from Earth. Thank you for joining us. And we start with the economic relations between Algeria and Egypt in this report by Marwa Belaiwar.
The visit of Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune to Egypt is certainly an opportunity to open up on new prospects in bilateral economic relations, which are just waiting to blossom. Trade between the two countries does not always reflect the intrinsic potential of the two countries in terms of cooperation, a situation which, however, is the subject of diagnosis established by the economic operators on both sides. According to statistics of the Algerian Ministry of Trade and Export Promotion, trade between the two countries exceeded $747 million in 2022. At the same time, the value of the Algerian exports to Egypt had reached over $188 million against $559 million for imports. The reactivation of the Algerian-Egyptian Business Council and the organization of an economic forum during the first quarter of 2022 are the first indications of a brighter economic cooperation between the two countries, especially since the first experiences of Algerian-Egyptian investment have been successful, particularly in the industry, telecoms, energy solutions, and metal processing sectors. Because when two regional powers like Algeria and Egypt start talking about the economy, the momentum of prosperity spills over the entire African continent, starting with neighboring Libya. The mutual interest in the reconstruction of a pivotal country in the North African region can only be a stumbling block in the discussions between Algiers and Cairo concerning the Libyan file. As a result, potential partnerships in key sectors such as energy, construction, or the petrochemical industry flourish, a configuration whose milestones have already been planted through the creation of the ZDCAF African Free Trade Area.
And still with the same story today, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, met with his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, at the Presidential Palace in Cairo as part of his work visit to the Arab Republic of Egypt. Let's follow this report by Miriam Zian.
Yesterday, the President Abdelmajid Tebboune and the ministerial delegation were welcomed at Cairo International Airport by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and senior Egyptian officials. The Algerian president agreed on opening a cultural center in Egypt after his meeting with the Algerian community in his residence and listening to their concerns. In the joint press conference, the Egyptian president warmly welcomed his Algerian counterpart and agreed on developing cooperation in the economic, investment and trade fields in order to achieve comprehensive development goals in the two countries.
The main objective is facilitating investment and trade between both countries, and this was one of the topics that we discussed during our talks. We tackled the geo-regional political dimension in Africa and in the Arab region. And our goal would be a strategy of cooperation between Egypt, Algeria, and Africa.
They also discussed the need of intensive cooperation in the field of combating terrorism in all its forms and the international community's responsibility to adopt a comprehensive approach to address terrorism in all its dimensions. The two leaders discussed the latest developments on the Arab arena. They agreed on the importance of advancing the mechanisms of joint Arab action with the aim of preserving Arab national security and protecting the unity and sovereignty of the abilities of Arab countries. The Egyptian head expressed sincere wishes to Algeria for success in presiding over the upcoming Arab summit.
He would like to express the wishes of Egypt to Algeria for the best in presiding over the next Arab summit. We discussed the recent developments regarding the Palestinian cause and the efforts exerted to protect the rights of the Palestinians, as well as achieving their aspirations to an independent state according to the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi went on his first visit outside the country after ascending to power to Algeria, which reflects the depth of the relations between the two brotherly countries and peoples.
And to talk more about President Tebboun's visit to Egypt, I'm joined live by a panel of guests via Skype, even though I'm from Oman. Mohammed Karat, Public Relations and Mass Communication University lecturer, couldn't make it. So we are just going to keep our discussion with Hamoud Salhi, University Associate Dean from the USA, in addition to University lecturer, author from Algeria, Mahfouz Ali Zoui, who joins us live via phone. Thank you both for joining us. And I will start with you, Hamoud Salhi. I start with you, and in here, in what context comes the visit of Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune to Egypt?
Thank you, Nadia. This is a very important visit for obvious reasons. Egypt and Algeria are two key regional powers and have strong leadership and the tools to be playmakers and conflict resolution countries in the region. That's one of the area. The second issue that we need to notice is that when you look at the files that were discussed, for example, on a bilateral level, there is a clear indication that the two countries want the momentum to continue. Bear in mind, just as a historical reference, back in 2008, Egypt was the first foreign country to invest in Algeria, and was very instrumental in bringing telecommunication to the country. That momentum, as we've seen by the data you presented earlier, indicate that there is a strong desire to move in that direction, particularly when you look at the delegation that accompanies the president. You have the knowledge and economic relations, and in addition to the foreign ministry. So on the economic level, so the idea is to strengthen and to build on the momentum, but there is also another factor, the regional issues. The two countries have reached a common ground on how to address the issues. This is back in his visit to Egypt. The Algerian Foreign Ministry made it clear that the two countries have the responsibility to build peace and to work for security in the region. This, when you look at the agendas that was looked at, the conflicts in Northern Africa, in Africa, are all indication that the two countries are on the right path, looking for a solution that will serve them. The underlying convergence of interest here is very, very important, that the two countries have reached an understanding, perhaps, that the best pragmatic understanding that peace and security are very important to the African continent in general, but more so to neighboring countries countries like Libya, for example. So it is an agenda also that includes preparation for the Arab League. Algeria has a proactive role in that area.
Yes, Hamoud, we will dig a little bit in these files in our upcoming questions, and let me here bring into our discussion Mahfoud, who joins us via phone. And according to you, Mahfoud, what can this visit offer to the Algerian-Egyptian relations?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, and I would like to say good evening to everybody. So coming back to your question, the Egyptian local media said today that the visit will mark a new departure in the bilateral relations between Algeria and Egypt for a combination of reasons. As we all know, Algiers and Cairo are key players in the regional institutions of the Arab League and the African Union. But unfortunately, the level of cooperation between the two countries during the last decade or the two previous decades has not reflected neither the strong historical ties between the two countries nor the size of the two economies. I mean, the Egyptian economy and the Algerian economy. For example, the economic exchanges between Algeria and Egypt failed to exceed the $1 billion figure, which remains a very low figure vis-à-vis the capacities of both countries. We also know that this is the first visit by an Algerian president to Egypt since 14 years, which make this visit even more significant on various levels. Also, President Abdelmajid Tebboune did not head to Egypt alone. As we know, he is accompanied by an important ministerial delegation, and it is expected that a number of contracts and memoranda of understanding will be signed even during this two-day visit. So, personally, I think the visit can boost the relations between the two countries in a way favorable to both countries and also to the region as well.
Thank you, Mahfoud. And back to you, Hamoud. Probably you have already answered the question regarding what might this visit tackle as topics. And here you have answered this question. And we move on to another question, Hamoud. What about the consensus between the two countries regarding the regional Arab and African issues? Can you dig a little bit in this topic?
With the consensus is driven by pragmatic strategy on the one hand, and the second is also by the geopolitical interests that are very, very important to the region. Certainly, when you look at the issue of Arab League, for example, it is high time now for Egypt, who has played a major role in the past, to be a leader in promoting Arab issues. It can continue to play that role by being by seeing the position that the Algerian, for example, are taking, specifically bringing the Palestinian factions to national dialogue, bringing the Libyan to a national dialogue, achieving a political solutions there. And interestingly enough, there is a consensus in that idea that the Egyptian leadership does talk about consensus, looking for political solution, settlement. The reason here is that the region cannot continue fighting internal wars, and we cannot continue seeing what we have been seeing. And as leaders, regional leaders, the two countries have the capacity and the will to play a major role in bringing all the countries together, namely and particularly in preparation for the Arab League.
Yeah, this is Hamoud regarding the Middle East. And now let me just bring Mahfoud and to talk a little bit about regional and Sahel region. Do you think, Mahfoud, is it possible to revive the Algerian mediation when it comes between Egypt and Ethiopia regarding the Renaissance Dam crisis?
As regards to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah Sisi said in his press conference today that talks with the President Tebboune involved Egypt's water security, which means that Cairo still believes that Algeria can play a fruitful mediation role, not least because it enjoys and it still enjoys the confidence of all the parties affected by the Ethiopian dam crisis, including Sudan, Egypt, and Ethiopia. And this is a fundamental prerequisite for successful mediation. So it's very possible that Algeria will revive its effort to mediate between these countries.
Pretty cool. Back to you, Hamoud. What about the prospects of the two countries regarding military cooperation and fighting terrorism?
So the expectation is that they'll continue, or they will work to strengthen their efforts in combating terrorism. This is what both leaders stressed, talked in their press conference, and there is a reason to be hopeful in that sense. When you look at, for example, even in the United States, back 3 or 4 years ago, the Senate subcommittee or Senate subcommittee underscores the importance of the role that Egypt and Algeria play in combating terrorism, and specifically underscored the strong institutions and the experience that they have had with combating terrorism. So from that perspective, there should be no reason to continue on that path, particularly when you match that for their desire to establish peace and national reconciliation and dialogue in the Libyan crisis. These are serious matters, and they affect the stability of the country. So from that perspective, one would expect that such a conversation will continue. The discussion on implementing a strategy and working towards ending terrorism, reaching political solutions to the crisis are very strong.
Pretty cool. And finally, Mahfouz, what about the future of economic cooperation between Algeria and Egypt?
I believe that the economic file will be one of the most important issues that are discussed between both presidents. You know that in fields like energy and industry, there are some very important potential in Algeria here that Egypt can help bring in a new investment in Algeria. So it's very expected. That the economic exchanges between the two countries will improve over the next years, inshallah.
Thank you so much, and special thanks to the panel of guests who joined us in this discussion from the United States, Hamoud Salhi and Mahfouz Ali Zoui from Algeria via phone. And now moving on to another story, the patriotic movement of the safeguarding and restoration led by Deputy Colonel Valerie Damibe appeared on state television saying that they had ousted Kabouri, the government, and suspended the constitution. Marwa Belaiwa reports.
Mutinous soldiers declared Monday on state television that the military junta has seized control of Burkina Faso amid unknown whereabouts of President Roch Kabouri, while conflicting reports on whether he has been detained by dissident forces or not are being spread.
Le mouvement qui regroupe toutes les composantes des forces de défense.
The movement which brings together all the components of defense and security forces has thus decided to put an end to the power of Mr. Kabouri on 24th of January 2022, a decision taken with the sole aim of enabling our country to get back on track and to gather all its forces in order to fight for its territorial integrity, its recovery and its sovereignty.
Son redressement et sa souveraineté.
Kabouri has not been seen in public since the crisis began in the early hours of Sunday, but 2 posts have appeared on his Twitter account. The location of President Kabouri is still unidentified. A soldier in the mutiny who spoke on condition of anonymity told the Association Press that Kabouri has submitted his resignation. The new military regime said it had suspended Burkina Faso's constitution and dissolved the National Assembly. The country's borders also have been closed, and a curfew will be in effect from 9 p.m. to 5 p.m. local time. The military spokesperson said the new military leaders would work to establish a calendar acceptable to everyone for holding new elections without giving further details. The mutinying troops earlier demanded the sacking of military chiefs and more resources to fight terrorists after gunfire was heard overnight near the presidential palace and the quarters in the capital Ouagadougou. After the televised announcement, crowds took to the streets, cheering and honking can horns in support of the takeover. People hoped that the coup would ease the devastation they have endured since terrorist violence spread across the country.
And in a latest attempt from European allies to show support for Ukraine, the European Commission proposed more than €1 billion in potential new funding for Kiev. Nabil Khazini reports.
The European Union again shows its support for Ukraine. The European Commission proposed a €1.2 billion new funding for Kiev. The Commission has proposed creating this first aid package, and as soon as it is approved, the EU will start working on a second batch of aid.
First of all, the Commission proposes a new emergency macrofinancial assistance package of €1.2 billion. This package will help Ukraine now to address its financing needs due to the conflict.
Joined by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken by video conference, foreign ministers from the European Union's 27 member states met in Brussels earlier on Monday to discuss a feared invasion of Russia to Ukraine. After the meeting, EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell expressed his optimism as long as talks are taking place.
Secretary Blinken will inform us, and I don't think we have to dramatize. As far as the negotiations are going on, and they are going on, I don't think that we have to let Ukraine and leave.
The European foreign ministers expressed their concerns about the crisis in Ukraine. Some threatened harsh sanctions if Russia goes ahead with the invasion.
We are ready if Russia would do this aggression against Ukraine, invade a sovereign country. It will be against international law. It will be against European security order.
We need to really be true to our words when we say that the sanctions will be unbearable. They have to be unbearable, and that's the only deterrent. If they are bearable, and it's not a deterrent.
It is true that the foreign ministers discussed some potential sanctions on Russia if it invades Ukraine, but a general agreement between the members seems to be difficult to attain. Europe's oils and gas imports from Russia could be a possible option to put pressure on Moscow. However, it is an option that seems to be hard to use without harming the European bloc. While other proposals, such as cutting Russia off from the global SWIFT payment system, has reportedly been refused by several countries.
Russia added Alexei Navalny and a number of his associates, including a top assistant Lyubov Sobol, to a database of terrorists and radicals on Tuesday. The ruling, and here on Tuesday, 9 more of Navalny's associates were added to the list, according to his anti-corruption foundation. Last year, the foundation was branded radical and dissolved, thereby barring anybody linked with it from standing for public office. At least 8 people have died and 50 were reported injured in a crash outside an Africa Cup of Nations football match in Cameroon. The incident occurred as football fans attempted to access Olembi Stadium in Yaoundé to watch the match between Cameroon and Comoros. The Confederation of Cup Football said it's currently investigating the situation in order to obtain more details about these incidents. Less than 2 weeks before the opening of the Winter Olympics, a few dozen COVID-19 cases in Beijing have prompted authorities to test millions of people in the capital and extend that to anyone buying cold medicines. The tough new measure came even as the city of Xi'an, a major tourist destination that is home of the terracotta warrior statue army, lifted a lockdown Monday that had isolated its 13 million people for months. And for more news about COVID-19, let's follow this report by Zahra Farjani.
Japan's daily count of new COVID-19 infections exceeded 60,000 for the first time on Tuesday. A Japanese advisory panel is set to approve the expansion of tougher measures against COVID-19 to 80 additional regions on Tuesday, putting more than 70% of the country under restrictions. About 24 cases of COVID-19 have been recorded among the crew of an Australian warship expected to arrive in coronavirus-free Tonga on Wednesday to deliver humanitarian aid, due to the massive volcano eruption and a tsunami on January 15. Germany has extended its current pandemic measures as the experts panel appointed by the government warned the Omicron variant could bring critical infrastructure in Europe's biggest economy to a breaking point. Chancellor Olaf Scholz said he had agreed with the heads of the federal states to extend restrictions, such as limiting private gatherings to 10 people and requiring proof of booster vaccination or a negative test at restaurants. People arriving in England or Scotland from abroad will no longer have to take COVID tests if they are fully vaccinated. In a boost for families, the changes will come in from 4 a.m. on 11 February, in time for the half-term break. Rules have also been eased for unvaccinated travelers who will no longer have to take a day 8 test or self-isolate. However, they will still need pre-departure and day 2 tests. The Spanish authorities have been imposing restrictions on different regions of the country based on their infection levels. Since the Balearic and Canary Islands have been registering high infection rates, tourists as well as citizens will no longer be permitted access to spas and saunas, among others, since these are enclosed areas.
According to the United Nations, at least 32 people, including children, have been killed during armed raids in South Sudan's eastern Jonglei state. UN mission in South Sudan said in a statement that among the dead were 3 children who drowned in a river while trying to escape the brutal civil war in the country, killed nearly 400,000 people and displaced millions. A severe snowstorm disrupted road and traffic Monday in the Greek capital of Athens and in neighboring Turkey's largest city of Istanbul, while snow blanketed most of Turkey and Greece, including several Aegean islands. The Greek government declared a holiday Tuesday in the Greater Athens area, parts of central Greece and the islands to keep people from leaving home. Key branches of the civil service as well as food stores, gas stations and pharmacies will stay open. According to medics, Sudanese security forces have killed 3 protesters during demonstrations calling for civilian rule almost 3 months after a military coup. Islam Sidi reports.
After 4 NYPD officers shot dead during a 72-hour period, Eric Adams, New York mayor, outlined what he called precision prevention plans to fight gun violence.
NYPD officer Jason Rivera was killed in the line of duty that Friday night, doing what he swore an oath to do, protect the people of this city. We pray for him, his family, as well as for his partner, Officer Wilbert Mora, who remains in the hospital. But my fellow New Yorkers, we are going to do a lot more than pray. We're going to turn our pain into purpose. We're going to unite and take action.
According to Eric Adams, changes will be applied in terms of new neighborhood safety teams, focusing more on gun violence in the coming weeks, aiming 30 areas where he said 80% of violence takes place. New York City's police department would increase teamwork with the state and federal law enforcement to curb the flow of illegal guns into the city, and would work to have officers conduct spot checks for weapons at entry points into the city, including bus and train stations. The mayor even put a set of plans including facial recognition technology, cash rewards for informants of gun-related crimes, and installing more surveillance cameras pointed toward the streets. The mayor also intends to depend on pastors and other religious leaders to communicate a synchronized public safety message to their churchgoers through discourses. Adams stated that he would seek additional funding for mental health care and would focus on hiring municipal judges who have a demonstrated commitment to keeping gun-wielding felons off the streets. Adams pledged to expand summer youth programs, provide more assistance to youth adults aging out of the foster care system, an advocate for community hire legislation that would require more local jobs.
And now it's time for some economic news around the world in this report by Nabil Khazini.
The International Monetary Fund has revealed its predictions for the global economic growth. IMF expects a 4.4% growth, a 5.9% down from an estimation during 2021. The world lender said the reduction in its updated 2022 forecast was largely led by the world's two largest economies, namely the United States and China. The economy in Mexico grew in November for the first time in 4 months. Economists expected a 1% growth, but a report published by Mexico Statistics Institute showed the Mexican economy expanded 1.66%. Experts now question whether it will be able to avoid recession at the end of the year or not. Heavy snowfall forces Istanbul airport in Turkey to shut down. One roof of the cargo terminals in Europe's busiest airport collapsed under the heavy snow. The airport of Istanbul serviced more than 37 million passengers in 2021, becoming one of the world's most important air hubs. Consumer Goods Unilever has confirmed plans to cut 1,500 jobs under a shake-up of its global operations. The company announced that the cuts to senior and junior management roles were the result of a new, simpler organizational structure. Beauty and well-being, personal care, home care, nutrition and ice cream will now be the 5 distinct divisions of the company.
And finally, thrusters on the James Webb Space Telescope fired for 297 seconds on Monday at 2 p.m. as it approached its final destination around 1 million miles from Earth, City Islam reports.
The world's largest and most powerful space telescope has reached its final destination after a 30-day journey roaming the cosmos, 1 million miles away from Earth. James Webb Telescope reached its designated spot between Earth and the Sun on Monday, shooting its thrusters to attain the exact course.
We are one step closer to uncovering the mysteries of the universe, and I can't wait to see Webb's first new views of the universe this summer.
The huge telescope will allow scientists to see into the universe from far, approximately 14 billion years ago, when stars and galaxies were just beginning to form. The success of the project, according to Bill Oakes, project manager at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, can be credited to all team members who have spent many years, if not decades, to certifying the telescope's mission is a success.
We are now on the verge of aligning mirrors, instrument activation and commissioning, and the start of wondrous and astounding discoveries.
Monday's milestone is critical in kicking off the exploration of parts of the universe never previously seen by the human eye. NASA's engineers will now undertake a 3-month process of provisional alignment of the Webb telescope in order to get the best optics for scientific research. The 7-ton spacecraft has reached a distance of 1 million miles from Earth and is presently orbiting the Sun. The Webb telescope is a successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, which is located just 530 kilometers above Earth.
And now it's time to have a look again to our main top stories. President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune held private talks with his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, followed by a press conference initiated by the two presidents to review the most important negotiations results between the two countries. The patriotic movement of safeguarding and restoration, led by Deputy Colonel Valery Damibi, appeared on state television saying that they had ousted Kabori, the government, and suspended the constitution. At least 8 people have died and 50 were reported injured in a crash outside an African Cup of Nations football match in Cameroon. Less than 2 weeks before the opening of the Winter Olympics, a few dozen COVID-19 cases in Beijing have prompted authorities to test millions of people in the capital and extend that to anyone buying cold medicine. And thrusters on the James Webb Space Telescope fired for 297 seconds on Monday at 2 p.m. as it approached its final destination around 1 million miles from Earth. That's all from me, Nadia Kasmi, and the rest of the team. The news continues on Alt 24 News. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.